So I finally got around to doing a video on metallics, which I've been talking about for a while. I got a few lined up here. I got some Ranger mixatives and I got some Pinata, and I'm gonna show you a few different examples on how I use these. Now this is a piece I've done. This is with Ranger Gold. There's not a lot on, but I feel like it has a very nice look, sort of making these beautiful lines. Another piece I did with the Pinata Brass, and I went a little crazy on this one. There's a lot on it. It's a beautiful color and also my favorite, my absolute favorite to use. On this one you can see that, well, there's a lot on it, and some places it mixes in a little with the color, but it also makes these very beautiful lines, and the colors stay pretty much the same, which is why it's my favorite. I'm gonna start to show you a few different examples with this one, the brass, and also the Ranger Silver mixative. I'm gonna start with that one, I think. I'm gonna use Copic black to show you, and always remember to shake it off. Always shake your metallics before you use them. I'm going to do two examples with the Copic black and the Ranger Silver mixative and show you two very different results. On this one, I'm going to use a very, very tiny little drop. Very small amount. And I'm going to add a little bit of the isopropyl. Now what I'm going to do on this one is I'm going to pick it up and slowly tilt it around. You've seen me maybe do this in some of my other videos when I do fades. Now you can see that tiny bit of silver sort of floating around on top of the ink. And the more I sort of swirl it around, it's gonna break up into slightly smaller pieces. Now don't pay attention to how this shape looks. I'm not trying to create something beautiful here, just want to show you how the metallics work. Now I'm going to use the air to very, very slowly move the metallic around. There's not a lot of power on this, and I'm keeping it sort of close to the paper and around on the outside of the ink. I don't know if you can see this sort of breaking up a little bit, the silver. And there's not a lot on this, but this is one of the ways to use the Ranger Silver mixative, because I do get very mixed results. But one of the things that works the best for me in making it break up into these little pieces is when I use a very small amount. Now you can see there's already some lines. So even though there's not a lot of silver, you can make very, very pretty lines. You can get it to end up around the edges of your ink. And I'm just going to dry the last little bit, and I'm going to show you. So you can see those beautiful lines. It's not completely dry, but the black is still black, or grayish. It will turn a little gray. This is one example. I'm going to do another one, still using the black, but this time I'm going to use a bigger amount of the metallic. It's still the silver. I'm going to use a much bigger drop on this one, and I'm going to go a little crazy with the air. I'm not going to swirl it around slowly. I'm going to move it just using the air. Be a little more power on this. Now you can see in the beginning the silver is still sort of floating on top and moving around and breaking off into sort of smaller pieces. But because I've got a much bigger amount on it and I'm using a lot more air, once it slowly starts to dry, and you can see this on the right hand side, it sort of takes over the black ink and it turns all silver. Even though it looks like it's floating on top, it will sort of blend in because I have too much silver on it and I am using a lot of air to move it around. Now you can see it's floating on top, but it sort of just takes over and there's basically no black ink left. It is covered underneath the metallic. So you can see two very, very different results using the same color and the same metallic. This is one of the reasons that metallics are tricky, because you don't use the right amount and you might get a little too violent moving it around. You could probably improve this one a little bit. What I'm going to do is add a little ink and no more metallic, a little isopropyl, and then I'm going to mix it very slowly into the silver. Now you can see it's starting to float on top again, which is usually what you want. This is what I like anyway. You can sometimes fix a piece. If you have overdone it on the metallics like I just did, you can sometimes fix it. You can start working around the silver and dry it from the outside in, and you will see on the right hand side the black, some of it anyway, will remain black. Now you can wipe some of the metallic off, but you can sort of just work your way around the metallic and start blending it in a tiny little bit. Now some of it will end up all silver again, but you can see on the right hand side it's still black. So if you sort of continued working your way around, you could fix it and you could get more black in there. See, it's a little black on the right hand side, but I would recommend using a smaller amount of the Ranger Silver mixative. Now we're going to try it with the brass. I'm still going to use, is it the black I'm using? I think it is. Now I'm not going to use a big amount of brass. You can get away with using more brass than you can with the silver. I'm just going to use a little bit, and I'm going to do the same as I did on the first one. Just slowly tilt it around. And you can see the brass moving, and the more I tilt it around, the more it will usually break up into smaller pieces. Even if I used a bigger amount of the brass, I think I can just add a little bit more so you can see. Even if you use more brass, it still won't blend in completely. You still have to be a little careful with the air, but the brass is much more likely to stay on top of the ink. It will not blend in as much. Now I could have used twice as much brass on this and it still would not blend in completely. You can see it's still moving on top of the ink. You can break it off a little more if you don't want those sort of big pieces. It depends on what you like and what you want to do, but these are just little samples for you to show you what happens with the different types of metallics. Now, like I said, this is my absolute favorite because it works on pretty much all colors and all different brands of ink. I'm not sure I've ever actually tried a color where it didn't work. Now, even though there's not a lot of brass on this, you can see it's starting to make little lines, and the black ink is still black. The brass hasn't really blended in too much, and this is sort of what I like when I work on my pieces. Now I'm going to try with, I think this is Copic Violet. And I'm going to do the, yeah, I just got a lot of ink on there. I'm going to do the Ranger Silver again to show you this with a different color. Now again, I'm not going to use a whole lot, just a tiny bit, and you can see it floating on top already. Slowly, slowly swirling it around. You can move it just using your hair dryer, but you have to be careful. If you use too much power to move it back and forth, left and right, then you will mix it in more. You can see here it's mixing in only a tiny bit, but most of it is still floating on top of the ink. If I had used 3 times as much of the metallic, I would have gotten the same result as the second black one I did. It would just all turn silver. But I've used a small amount, and I haven't been moving it around all too much. I've been doing it very carefully, and then I will sort of get the same result as I did with the brass just before. Some tiny beautiful lines, or you can just try and get it to end up around the edges, which I do a lot when I do my fades. Now you can see it's almost dry, and it's still very, very purple. It hasn't really changed all that much. So when you use a small amount of the Ranger Silver or the other, I got gold and copper too, the results are still the same. Don't overdo it. And then you can make it work. Now you can see the purple is sort of still the same, and I got some beautiful lines. I could have used maybe a tiny bit more, but I'm just trying to keep it a little simple. Now I'm going to use the purple again, and I'm going to switch over to the Pinata Silver to show you how differently Ranger and Pinata Silver works. Just going to shake this up too. And in a moment you will see why I never use Pinata Silver. I always use brass, I never use the silver. Now this is also just a tiny drop, and you can see there's not really any silver effect on this. It's just sort of grayish. Now a tiny bit of isopropyl, and I'm going to start swirling it around like I did with the Ranger. As you can see, nothing is really happening. There's really no silver on this. There's sort of a grayish tone in there, but nothing sort of, there's no silver on top of the ink. Now, I have had some people say if they use blending solution instead of the isopropyl, that it then works. And I will say I have tried it, and it still doesn't work for me. Blending solution isopropyl, this is the result I get with the Pinata Silver. I've tried it on many different colors, and nothing really happens. So if anyone has made the Pinata Silver work, I would love to hear it, but it does not work for me. Nothing's happening. There's no silver, there's no lines, just purple. So I never use this. I'm going to do just one more example with the brass and the purple. I have used the Ranger Gold with purple, with fairly successful, but the brass still works a little bit better for me. Now you can see it's already floating on top. I haven't even added the isopropyl yet. This is just how well the Pinata Brass works on like all colors. I do use the Ranger Gold sometimes. The Pinata Brass is a tiny bit darker, but still it sort of looks like gold. So I use the Ranger sometimes, but I like this one better just because it works on all colors. Now you can see, just like I did with the black, it's not really blending in. A tiny bit maybe, but most of it breaks off into little pieces. I'm just going to dry this very carefully. And again, try not to have too much air directly on the ink until it is almost dry. You can see I have the hairdryer very close to the paper and sort of working my way around it. When this is dry, you will see that the result is basically the same as when I used it with the Copic black. I hope that this helps you a little bit, because so many people find metallics frustrating, and I think often it's simply because you are using the wrong metallic with the wrong color. You are using maybe too much, like I showed you with the Ranger Silver. And oh, there are so many different ways to do this. Some people swear to blending solution when they use metallics. I'm not a big fan of it, but you should definitely try and see what works for you. That one, not good. Too much air. This one doesn't work at all. Pinata Silver. Now the silver in smaller amounts works a lot better, and the brass works with pretty much everything for me. This is just my personal opinion. You should definitely try. Now here's a little tip for you. I make these little samples of different colors of ink and different metallics. And that way I can always, before I start a piece, I can always see which color do I want to use, which metallic works with this one, because there are so many that don't work, and you start a new piece and think, oh, I want to use this blue with this Ranger mixative, and then it doesn't work at all and you've wasted your time. So this will save you a lot of time and frustration. It will make it a lot easier for you to pick your color and pick your metallics. The samples that you like the best, the colors you like the best, the metallics you like the best, this will just make it so much easier. So I really do recommend that you spend a little time doing little color samples like this. I know for myself, I have so many different colors and brands, and I can't remember which colors work with which metallics. So I use these a lot. I'm very happy to have these. It makes it so much easier for me when I start a new piece to figure out which color metallic to use and which absolutely not to use together. So I hope that you find this helpful. I know metallics are tricky, and I hope this will help you just a little bit. Now you can also use a brush to add a little extra metallic if you didn't do as much as you wanted to. I prefer the way it happens on the paper. I like that better, but I sometimes use a brush to add a little extra metallic. Now, this is sort of all I have for now. I hope that this helps you a little bit, because metallics are tricky. But I highly recommend you do some samples. It will help you out in the long run. Now, leave a comment if you have any questions, and as always, thank you very much for watching.